PixMix is brought to you by the Arun Meta Show, broadcasting on Liberated Syndication, youtube.com/Arun Meta Show, and is in association with the Old School Lane podcast.
PixMix is brought to you by oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the Arun Meta Show.
Welcome to PixMix, the show where we randomly review a Pixar film. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I finally have moved from Florida to Alabama. We went through a bit of a rough patch this past week, but things are getting a little bit better, and by next week things should be getting back to normal. I haven't unpacked everything from my moving truck, which is why I don't have access to my microphone, which is why I sound like this. So apologies for that, everybody.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I am excited about discussing about this episode of PixMix today.
Uh-huh. And just before we begin, I just want to give an announcement to everybody. Now, some people are going to be finding this quite strange that for the second time in a row, there's actually a PixMix episode in place of an Arun Meta Show episode. Let me just tell everybody on the Arun Meta Show podcast feed basically what's going on. We are now going to be going through a massive reconversion phase, and so we're going to be relaunching the show. It's going to be very exciting this August. So keep staying tuned for the Arun Meta Show podcast for updates about exactly what's going on. And but just to let you guys know, just for the meantime, the Arun Meta Show is going through a bit of a restructuring, and so just for the meantime, just for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some random fun stuff and things. So keep tuned for that. So you're not going to be missing out with anything. And so you're definitely not going to be missing out with anything now, because what we're going to talk about here is probably going to be the grand finale, I would say, of this series of PixMix. And just to let everybody know, all the people who are fans of PixMix who are kind of sad that this is probably going to be the last episode for a while, let me just safely say this to everybody. As long as, and I've probably said this on the last episode as well, as long as Pixar is still in business, we're still going to be doing an episode of PixMix. But likelihood is it's probably just going to be when a Pixar film comes out, or when we want to really talk about a short really badly. So that's basically how the PixMix is going to exist in the near future. So cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So Patricia, I mean, we would normally, I think people would be normally guessing what we would be reviewing this time around, but I mean, let's face it, I think this is going to be like the grand finale of PixMix, and everyone's kind of knowing what we're going to be talking about. So shall we just get right into it in a super way?
Yes, absolutely. Let's do this.
Okay, here we go.
Here comes Elastigirl, stretching her arms, Elastigirl, no one's beyond her reach.
Now, I know some people are saying that we're playing the Elastigirl theme and not really the main theme of The Incredibles 2, but let's face it, this is basically centered around one character in this particular show. Not to say that it doesn't involve everybody else as well, and I have to say, for a sequel, it is very worthy to the original.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you have to understand about how much of a huge follow-up that this movie had to be compared to the original, because we have been waiting for this movie for almost 15 years. And we thought to ourselves, oh man, how are they going to top this? How are they going to top off the original Incredibles, which nowadays has become like an instant classic for a lot of people. And for a lot of people who are really skeptical about this, their expectations were pretty filled, because this movie is a really, really good movie. And for anybody who is really skeptical about it, then please not be, because this movie does pretty much follow up to the legacy of the original.
And this is the movie we've kind of been building up PixMix towards, and I guess we kind of had a bit of a bad omen when we finished off with Brave, and so I think I was, and also on top of that as well, so something like the lead up to this. Now, for those of you who did not know, and I think I probably did say this a couple of weeks ago, I was actually spoiled on the Incredibles 2 story, so I kind of knew what was going to happen before the movie came out, but I just kind of said to myself, look, even though I know what's going to happen, I want to see how it's executed. And I want to see how this basically gets done. And so I guess, it's I guess before we actually get into the Incredibles film itself, we should actually address the attached short that came with it. And so this was a short film known as Bayo. It was directed by Domi Shi and is attached to the theatrical release. And so actually before also as with this as well, me and Patricia, we both saw this film together like we did with Coco. So
yes, we did see the movie together just like we did with Coco. And it's kind of interesting because I have been seeing surprisingly a lot of backlash of Bao, similar to when a lot of people were pretty much like giving a lot of mixed opinions over Lava, in which, there were some people who had no idea what they were watching. In fact, there was even a tweet from Todd in the Shadows. He was talking about like, the short was so confusing that I actually had to turn my phone on when watching it because I had no idea what I was looking at. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people seem to say the same thing. They had no idea what to make of Bao.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, maybe it was kind of like going towards like, this is basically what it is I'm trying to find a good, I'll tell you what, actually, I'm looking on the, directly at the Wikia page, and they don't even have a description for it.
Yeah, so, it's not, I mean, yeah, the premise is very confusing when you take a look into it, but the premise is actually quite simple. It's basically about this woman, this Asian woman, who makes a bunch of dumplings, and one of the dumplings just so happens to come to life, and she treats it like a child, and she does everything with it. They go out shopping together, and they do their hair together and a whole bunch of things, and she sees how much the dumpling has grown. In fact, how it sprouts out facial hair is with sesame seeds, which is actually pretty cute. But basically, as the dumpling grows up, it becomes resentful to its mother and wants to basically be on its own. It wants to play soccer with the other kids, and the mother's not letting it. And she basically babies it. And I don't think we really want to give too much of the spoilers away for this one, but let's just say that it actually does lead up to something. Yeah, it's not just like weirdness for the sake of weirdness, which, if it was like a Pixar short, I mean, it's to be expected because they always like to think outside the box when it comes to their other shorts.
Well, the one thing they were hoping to basically describe in this short was basically empty nest syndrome, where basically the mother, is going through the grief of having a child walk out of the house for the first time. So it's sort of it's trying to relate to that, and so I mean that's okay for people who have gone who can relate to that experience, but for other people, yeah, you can kind of understand why that was. And keep this in mind, if we're going to talk about who this was directed at, I mean, the short film itself is okay for being directed like, maybe parents and of like children who are like grown older. But keep this in mind, the people who are going to be coming to the theater are going to be parents who are bringing their children and just, people who grew up with the film like 14 years ago. So it's like,
exactly.
There's as far as I'm aware, there's no demo for people who are empty nesting their children, as far as I'm aware. Now, maybe there might be older people in like maybe their 50s and 60s who have gone to watch this film. I don't know. But it was kind of not what we've been talking about through PixMix about how the animated shorts are complement the film that's going to precede it. This didn't do it at all.
No, not really, because I mean, to be quite honest, even though that Incredibles 2 was about Elastigirl, it didn't focus on her going through empty nest syndrome. Now, if it would have taken place like many years later in which, Dash and Violet and Jack grew up like everybody wanted, then I could see that. But for the most part, no. I mean, even though it is based off of a mother, they're two completely different ways of how they perceive the concept of, okay, the main protagonist is a mother character.
It makes you wonder if that was what they originally were going for with a sequel when they first thought about The Incredibles 2, and then when they kind of like decided what the short was going to be during that basis. So in a way, it makes you wonder if that was supposed to be the original intent of Incredibles 2.
Possibly.
Maybe, I don't know. It's interesting when you get this kind of like really weird mix And yeah, it's I just find the whole thing really confusing, really, when you think about it. So yeah, it's like I'm not saying it's a bad short, but I'm not saying it's a good short either. It's just kind of like in the middle there, if you will. So it's like I don't think it's going to be, at least for me. I mean, I don't know about everybody else. Maybe they'll complain about it for till the ends of the earth about how they didn't like it. But in my regards, I just don't think it's going to be a short. I think the short we're going to be referencing every time we talk about The Incredibles 2. But I don't think it's going to be a short we're going to be referencing on its own.
Yeah, it's not like Sanjay's Super Team or Presto, in which, those were the main highlights, and the movie was just eh. Yeah, I think that The Incredibles 2, just like, some other shorts that were just there, they didn't really do anything, and then we focus on the main movie. I think that's going to be that case. But yeah, I mean, I get the understanding of the message of Bao, definitely a lot more than what a lot of people thought of it when they saw it. And I think that when you're at that age and when you are going through that time in your life in which you have to say goodbye to your kids if they leave your home and you don't know what to do afterwards because you were dedicating yourself as a mother. I think that for the most part you would get it. But I think that for a lot of the people who grew up with the original Incredibles and for little kids, I don't think that they would understand it. I think this is one of those shorts that you would probably understand better when you're a lot older.
Yeah. So let's get into The Incredibles 2, and pretty much the thing we've all been waiting for the last 20 episodes. So here we go, everybody. In their attempt to stop the Underminer from robbing the Bank of Metroville, the authorities become concerned over the level of damage caused by the incident. Rick Dicker informs the Parr family that his department, the Super Relocation Program, is being shut down and forcing the Supers across the world to permanently adhere to their secret identities. So basically the film starts off from the. It looks like it seems to start off from the very beginning at when Metroville is obviously under attack, and from the first film, and then leads off with the Underminer. And I know I made a complaint. I know it's a pretty fickle complaint about this, but pretty much it creates a continuity error with the game.
The game was never in canon to begin with. I'd like to think of it like an alternative timeline, similar to like Legend of Zelda, in which there's like 3 different timelines in which Link and Zelda are going through various things. So I guess we can put it into that perspective, because if you guys if you're guys thinking that there's going to be this long epic battle with the Underminer that we've been waiting for almost 15 years, that we're showing a lot in the trailers, you're going to be disappointed. He only shows up in the first 5 minutes and he's never referenced again.
It makes you wonder if he's going to become, I mean, we'll talk about this in a bit, but it kind of makes you wonder if the Underminer is going to be like a regular feature in the Incredibles story, however they go, if they decide to pull it any further.
Yeah, I'm actually curious because I think that from what I read, the weekend that we saw The Incredibles 2, right before I started moving, I saw a news report. I forget whether it was MSNBC or something, I forget. But they were talking about how The Incredibles 2 was, I believe, like I think it was like either the highest grossing animated movie in the weekend or the fastest grossing movie over the weekend. I forget what it was, but if it did that well, that quickly, then I can assure you that we might be getting an Incredibles 3 much sooner. Yeah,
I think so too. So anyway, focusing back on the on the movie that we saw. So the Super Relocation Program is being shut down, and this story kind of makes sense when you think about it, because in the first film, a lot of supers died. Because of what Syndrome did in the original film. So you can probably imagine that maybe the super population now is pretty much in decline at this point.
Yeah,
and now there's it made sense to do that when you first saw it. So because who's left now? Frozone, The Incredibles, and pretty much nobody else, I think, at this point.
I mean, for the most part, I mean, let's think about this. In the first movie, a lot of the superheroes were pretty much gone, and the fact that the only time in which we do see like superheroes in this movie are like the newer ones, and we don't see any of the classics that we do know of from the original. And you're absolutely right, Aaron, that a lot of them must have died out. And The only ones that we do know of that are from the original that we saw in the first movie were Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Frozone. A lot of them must have died out from Syndrome because when he was doing that experiment. And so we can put the case in which when we see the new superheroes that are featured in this movie, they're from a newer generation who had to who were probably from the supers that we didn't meet up with, and they just decided to come on by, and they were hiding their powers, and they were told to never showcase them. And it's actually a pretty interesting perspective because in the first movie we only knew about Dash and Violet having superpowers and none of the others. So the fact that we actually do get to see what the other superheroes had to go through in order for them to hide their abilities and in order for them to live off normal lives is actually pretty interesting.
I'm really glad that they decided to go with original superheroes because what's the laziest thing they could have done with this movie when you really think about it? Like the easiest thing that Disney could do, because they own both franchises, is to combine the Incredibles universe with the Marvel universe.
Or they could have combined the Incredibles with Big Hero 6. Because they also did a movie on Big Hero 6 that wasn't involved with Marvel. So they could have also done that too.
Yeah.
Hey, you have a group of superheroes. We have a group of superheroes. Why don't we just put them together?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, obviously, crossover movie seems to be kind of like the thing at the moment. Obviously, we've got Avengers: Infinity War still basically breaking box office records. But I mean, do you think there's a possibility we could see the Incredibles and Big Hero 6? In a crossover situation?
Maybe. I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe I know that Kingdom Hearts 3 is late into development, and I know that it's probably not going to happen, but I mean, we already know as of right now that Toy Story and Monsters, Inc. are going to be in Kingdom Hearts 3. Maybe it could be a possibility that maybe the Incredibles characters can be in Kingdom Hearts 3. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Yeah, it will be. I don't know. It's like if they weren't originally intending to do that and they kind of did that now because of the response to the Incredibles movie, I don't know. It'd be kind of a rush job when you think about it.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, maybe when Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out in 2059, maybe we'll see it.
Yeah. So we pretty much see the. I mean, how do you feel about the whole thing that the superheroes are still illegal at this point, even though after everything that's happened?
Remember, it takes place immediately after the first movie, so we already knew that the superheroes were in hiding. That's been the main crux of the first movie, and the fact that it does take place immediately afterwards, we knew that superheroes were not going to just jump right into being legal right away. Especially in the scene in which when the Underminer is attacking the bank so they can steal all the money, and there's this news report making it out that the supers are causing all of this damage, and it was their fault that the bank and what was it, like City Hall was destroyed. It made the supers look really, really bad. And I guess with all this news that is being portrayed, I guess it wouldn't be too much a surprise that the government didn't want to have the supers legal to begin with.
Yeah, so obviously that's where Winston Dever comes in with his company DevTech, and he offers Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl and even Frozone the opportunity to come back. And he comes up with the solution that because the media and because politicians have such a negative view of superheroes, that he's going to secretly record, well, not secretly record, but obviously record everything that they do and show that they actually are good for the community. So, what do you think? In a way, is actually a very smart move. Because obviously, when you think that, and also I think that was pretty much that was how in Captain America: Civil War, that's kind of how it was portrayed with them, because after, they didn't really see like all the action that actually happened. They just saw like all the devastation and all the cleanup they had to do. So and obviously that led into obviously the whole UN thing. So.
Yes, it did. And, it's also nice that we have a character who is pro-superhero because, he grew up with superheroes. His dad was a major, fan of superheroes. He was, like, in contact with all the superheroes back in the day. So he basically just followed in his father's footsteps. And then you have his sister, who's his assistant in this company, and she's, like, the tech person. and basically they're telling Frozone, Mr. Incredible, and Elastigirl that they're gonna try to do some smaller. They're gonna try to fight smaller crimes and build up the people's confidence bit by bit until eventually they sign this huge document saying that we want to make supers legal again.
Yeah.
So
So I just think in regards to all of that, I thought very very smart way to do it. But so then there was the next bit, which is that they decided to choose Elastigirl in order to do that because they believe that Mr. Incredible will be too destructive. In
yeah, and to be
that.
fair, I mean, in the first movie, he basically, let's see, he almost like destroys a train, and then he crashes to that person when he tried to save him from suicide. I mean, yeah, I can understand where he's coming from, but it's a shame that that not the whole family was the main focus of the movie. But I would have liked to see, all the other characters portrayed and like saving the city. But I guess because the first movie did focus on Mr. Incredible, they want to give Elastigirl a chance because she didn't really do that much in the first movie outside of like at least like towards the halfway mark in which she actually did help out with saving Mr. Incredible and then eventually helping save the city.
How did you feel about that though? Because it felt to me like this was a rehash of the first film, where Mr. Incredible goes off to this on behalf of this corporation to go deal with this issue, and now here we have Elastigirl going on the behalf of a corporation to go deal with an issue of supers being legal again. So
Yeah, it is very, very much a rehash. It's very similar to Finding Dory, in which you have Dory and she's been kidnapped, and it's up to Marlin and Nemo to save the day. But instead of dentist's office, she's being put into the Marine Institute. So I guess it's very similar, in which instead of Mr. Incredible, you have Elastigirl, and she's being hired by this corporation so that she can be able to help them out and basically live the role of a superhero again. And it's up to Mr. Incredible to take care of the kids. So yeah, it is a bit of a rehash. You're
yeah,
absolutely
it
right.
it is, and so I think that's kind of like maybe that's probably the biggest weakness of the film, that they're just kind of like doing this again,
Yeah,
for
and we did talk about that in Finding Dory as well. I think that the only sequels from Pixar movies that we did talk about that felt like a progression was Toy Story 3 and to a lesser extent Cars 3. But at least with in The Incredibles 2, it does make somewhat a lot of sense that they wanted to focus on a different character because, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the first movie was about Mr. Incredible, and now the second movie was about Elastigirl, and it did show like this girl power. It showed about like she's the one who can be able to save the day and save the city and help fight crime, and it showed off this. It showed off that hey, females can be kick-ass too, which I guess in this day and age, we've already starting to get movies that showcase that. I mean, if it would have came out like in the early 2000s, that would have been like incredibly groundbreaking because back then we didn't have a lot of female superheroes who were presented well. I mean, we had like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and the Powerpuff Girls, and maybe like some side characters from group teams like Teen Titans, but not her own, not like the own superhero
yeah.
like from like Wonder Woman. Nowadays we have Wonder Woman, we have Black Widow, we have let's see, Captain Marvel. We're going to be getting Wasp really soon. So yeah, nowadays, representation of female superheroes are becoming big now.
Yeah, I just think that I mean, obviously the other side of this story is obviously Mr. Incredible basically being a stay-at-home parent, which I thought this felt like a bit of a. I don't think this. Would you really call this character evolution for Mr. Incredible? Like, because
You know what? I mean, I mean, I'm gonna put this in a fair perspective. Remember, Mr. Incredible, all of his life he worked in an insurance company where he had to follow the rules verbatim, and he didn't want to. So he never really had a chance to raise his kids at home. And if we're to take in like the setting of The Incredibles we can assume that it takes place around the 50s and 60s. So, this was at a time in which men were not the ones staying at home. They were the ones working and providing money and income for the family. So I can see why Mr. Incredible would have difficulties with raising his kids because he wouldn't know what to do. He didn't have to go through any of that.
Mm.
So the fact that he had to take responsibility with helping Dash with his math homework and trying to help Violet get back to Tony because he told the guy um, from the organization to erase his memory because Tony accidentally saw what you call it saw Violet out of her superhero outfit. So yeah, I mean now his memory is completely erased and he doesn't remember Violet at all, and so he's trying to help her out. And then of course what we knew from the ending of the first movie is that Jack is developing his superpowers, and we see a lot more superpowers than we did in the first movie. Not only does he do
here's the thing about
the laser, not only does he do the laser vision, changing the demon, turning into metal, and turning himself into fire, but also he knows how to teleport. He also knows how to duplicate himself.
Yeah,
So
but
there's a lot of
pulling you up
powers
on
he has.
pulling you up on the whole Violet Tony story arc. I mean, this isn't a very. Is this really? You can't really relate this to anything in real life when you think about it. I mean, from what they were trying to go with the story is that I think they were trying to make the family relatable. I think to other people, like Elastigirl stretched out all in all places because she's a mom, and obviously Mr. Incredible is like big and strong because he wants to be the father figure of the household and everything like that. You have Violet, who has her character perspective as well, but I mean. I don't know, like you can't really make it seem. I don't think you can really make it relatable that a father's trying to set up Tony after erasing his memory. I mean, I can't recall that happening ever in a real life family situation to my knowledge. And,
I mean, that's true. I mean, I guess it is a bit of a rehash of the first movie in which Violet is trying to get Tony to notice her. And I guess I mean, similar to how we felt, Elastigirl's plot was a rehash. Violet's plot is also a rehash because now she has to get her to, get Tony to notice her all over again.
Yeah. And do you think, did Dash really do anything in this film besides, trying to learn math?
Oh man, I guess you could argue like towards the end of the movie, but for the most part, there's not really much of a character growth in Dash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just
not really.
Yeah,
I mean, except for math homework, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really much for Dash to kind of like he was just kind of just there when you think about it. I mean, not to say he didn't have an influence on what was going on. Here's the thing. Not to say he didn't have an element in what was going on. He obviously had a lot of influence over what happened. But in regards to like him developing as a character, I don't think he didn't really develop in any way. It's like the great thing about the Incredibles was
between Dash in the first movie and Dash in the second movie is that he's played by a different voice actor because since it's been 14 years, the original voice actor's voice grew too old, and so they had to be.
But here's the thing about it's nothing to do with the voice actor in my opinion. It's something to do with like the character itself. In the Incredibles, Dash developed as someone who had to basically be part of a superhero team. He had to get on with his with his family, and in order to stop the forces of evil, and that was his character. A basic description of his character function in the Incredibles. In the Incredibles 2, there's not really much he does. In regards to that. So, I mean, I can't really make an argument that Dash really developed in any way. I'm hoping that, he'll develop in the future, but, this left a bit lacking, really. And then there was, obviously they had to put in Edna Mole for that, and Edna Mode, didn't she? She was just kind of like, just to kind of drive the story a bit forward about, Jack and, obviously leading on Mr. Incredible to learn how to bring him up right and that, and I don't know, it just felt kind of felt a bit kind of shoveled in, really, when you think about it.
Yeah,
That
it did feel shoved in because, we loved Edna so much, and we want to have her back into the movie. But in this case, it's just for Jack Jack. She's developing his suit, and she tells him ways about how he can be controlled, and why does he have all these multiple powers. So there is that, absolutely.
That to me was a bit
But
weird because, like, last time I checked, Edna was just the costume designer. She wasn't. She didn't like have a, as far as I'm aware, like a psychic. I mean, I know she had a dominant control over these people. Obviously, she was like the comedic thing about Edna was that she was short in stature, and she had she could command like even Mr. Incredible around, and and stuff like that. No capes and like and things like that. But to see her kind of like take this kind of like this massive interest all of a sudden in this baby, and that he has all this potential and stuff. I don't know. It's like I mean, I'll accept that if it's kind of like maybe some kind of character development, but really, in order to do that, I would rather have seen Edna kind of develop like a slow kind of like Stockholm syndrome, if anything, like the fact that she's stuck with this baby and that she now has to kind of appreciate it being there, and then eventually she does appreciate it being there, I guess. And even though it was a situation not forced, kind of like forced upon her by Mr. Incredible, and I'd rather have seen that go in that direction rather than just instantly liking the baby, I don't know. I just thought that I just felt that was a better way of doing it. So, but that's just me. Obviously Helen is going out being Elastigirl. We have Mr. Incredible doing the whole stay-at-home dad thing, and then we get our villain, who is the mysterious Screenslaver. And,
yes.
I like this villain, and because I like how they kind of did the Mandarin from Iron Man 3. It's like they kind of did that kind of deal with it, which is that it wasn't who we thought it was, and that there was actually someone else behind the throne, if you will, around the throne of power behind Screenslaver. And so I like the. I mean, obviously we're going to go into spoiler territory here, so if you don't want to get spoiled on The Incredibles 2, then obviously look away now, and come back to this video when you watch The Incredibles 2. So here we go. So what do you think of Evelyn Endeavor being Screenslaver?
I mean, it was, to be fair, I kind of felt a little bit disappointed.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I saw it coming, and I was wondering how they were gonna like introduce her and stuff, and I guess the motive behind it, I guess I can somewhat understand. Obviously, Winston Endeavor blames like the person who shot their pet their dad for he blames him that the superheroes weren't there, but Evelyn blames the fact that he kept this blind faith in superheroes for so long, and didn't go into the safe room and then he died of his of his incompetence rather than than that, and she blames the supers for that. And so, I mean, it's pretty irrational, but I guess supervillains, do things that aren't all that rational, I guess, sometimes. So I guess, I can see what they were
as relatable and understanding compared to Syndrome in the first movie, because you understand why he became a supervillain. We saw the flashback in the first movie, in which, he's a little kid and he wants to be just like Mr. Incredible. He becomes Incrediboy, and Mr. Incredible doesn't want anything to do with him. And he just felt so let down and so disappointed that he pretty much renounced superheroes, and he became a supervillain, and he wanted to, build a device and hire superheroes so that, he can do away with them until he's like the only one left to save everybody. That is much more relatable, and it makes a lot more sense.
It's a shame because in Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, we have these debates about who was the most sympathetic, antagonist. Is it Lotso or is it the Prospector? In this, it's kind of like night and day. Like you've got Syndrome, who was done right, and you kind of got Evelyn Endeavor, who's kind of like I just think it's night and day in this situation. Instead of like, you can't really compare the two, can you? You can definitely tell one is better than the other in this situation.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, I can understand for Toy Story 2 and 3 because both of them have their pros. It's just a matter of what you believe is the most relatable, because both of them have pretty tragic backstories. But with Screenslaver, I never really like felt it. I mean, sure, it's the whole my dad tried to call superheroes, but none of them showed up, and so he was killed by those robbers, and then my mom died of a broken heart, and so because of that, I renounced superheroes. It's I mean that's I don't know. Just I felt like something there just needed to be a slight punch up to making it a little bit more tragic, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think of her methods? Because she basically used other people to basically be Screenslaver. So there wasn't just
Yeah.
like a Screenslaver. There was obviously multiple Screenslavers.
Yeah, that is true. And what she did was is that she had these goggles that hypnotized people to do what she wanted them to do, and basically there were like multiple screenslavers. So it actually did, become pretty suspenseful into who is screenslaver. Is it this pizza delivery kid? No, it's somebody else. So yeah, there was no instance into knowing like who really was the character. I mean, we saw that the train rider was being hypnotized. We saw the pizza delivery guy being hypnotized. So there was no strong indicator on who it was until much later in the movie.
Yeah. There was a bit of a comparison, which I think was a bit unfair. Some person online, I think, compared it to like the chum buckets in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I don't know. I think this was done better than the chum buckets, if you ask me. But
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the chum buckets, they wore a bucket on their head, and and you want to know how it was defeated? By the power of rock and roll.
yeah, and this was just the superheroes had to basically kick ass to get those goggles off.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. So there was a genuine fight happening.
What do you think of the new generation of supers?
Oh man, that's really tough because I actually do like them. There were some that I felt that there should have been a lot more focus on, but the ones that we did remember, they were actually pretty cool, especially Void. I think Void was the most memorable one of the group.
I could see Void coming back in some way, shape, or form. I think
Yes.
they seem to put a lot of emphasis on her when she was there, and I'm trying to remember who played her. I think it was Sophia Bush. Played,
Yeah, that's
played
where it
Void.
was. Sophia Bush.
Yeah, so I guess maybe we might see her again in the future, but yeah, I think she looks like a pretty likable character, and I think if they did do dare I say, if they ever did a Void spin-off movie, like it would be interesting to see them do here's this super. She's finally got the opportunity to be legal and basically be a super, but she's probably had no guidance or any training or anything like that, and probably doesn't know how to fully grasp her powers. You actually saw that in the Incredible in this movie, and so I'd be intrigued to see if they did a Void movie, like how she would she's kind of basically thrown into the deep end and like, oh good grief, I've got to be the super now because super is illegal again, and now I have this responsibility, and that'd be kind of a fun movie to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I also like Void's powers as well. She basically has the power of like the portal gun.
Do you know, in regards to, I just had a thought actually. What if how awesome would of a twist would it be that they say that Tony Ridinger found out about Violet, and but instead of instead of like just erasing his memory, like they're there and then, he reveals that he's a super as well. And
That would be really interesting. Or maybe he didn't know that he was a super, and his parents, or maybe his powers were suppressed, and he didn't know about his full potential until later on.
Yeah, and then so obviously that gives them and Violet kind of a bit of a relatable scene later on. I thought that would have been fun if they did that, rather than just kind of going the whole erase memory and Dad's got to fix it kind of deal. Yeah. It's sort of bad that we're thinking of better ideas for this movie than I think what we were served up. I think this.
And it's not to say that the movie was bad, mind you. It's just that when you have to wait for a movie for 14 years, it's like what fans of the Jungle movie was going through. They were writing so many fanfics of so many story possibilities that you just kind of pull all those sources into thinking about how you're going to make a better movie.
Yeah, I think one thing I will definitely say from some people's perspective, I think the fact that they've gone through so many fan fiction, so much fan art. Oh my god, that whole Sinlet thing, where I still don't understand that to this day about putting Violet and Syndrome together as a couple. I still don't understand that.
Yeah, I still don't get it.
Yeah, I still don't get that either. But there was a lot. I think there was like a whole world kind of built for the Incredibles in the fandom. And now that this movie has now come out, and some people have been kind of disappointed by the fact that it's never followed in their line. And keep this in mind, everybody: fan fiction is not canon, and fan art's not canon either. So just because you have a fan perspective on something doesn't necessarily make it true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but So they get to the. So what do you think of the whole grand finale of it all, like the whole boat scene?
The grand finale was actually really awesome.
Yeah, I like how like they were gonna like ram the boat into the city and like just cause like massive amounts of destruction, because it would have been the thing that would have ended the supers there and then when you think about it. And I don't know if you feel like she was like trying to like kill off all the whole new generation of supers on that boat as well. Like
I wouldn't be surprised, because, like you said before, the old generation of supers were. I mean, we don't really know too much about where they are, or if they're even around at all. So we can assume that maybe they're gone. And if that was the case, then hey, we have these new generation of supers that decide to show up. Let's kill them off so that we never have supers again. So yeah, that could be a possibility on why she wanted that to happen, or maybe it was a case in which, hey, the news report was showing off that, what was it, like the mayor was signing a declaration that supers were now going to be legal, and if the boat was actually going to crash into the city, and maybe if the destruction wasn't that bad, it would just show off that, hey, it was the supers' fault, and let's make them illegal again. Maybe we can have them all arrested.
Mm-hmm. So so we have the massive boat scene. Obviously, the Incredibles save the day and obviously smash the goggles and capture. I like how they did the whole thing where they like she was like jetting the plane into the air, and obviously Elastigirl was succumbing to the oxygen, the lack of oxygen, and that was quite gripping. When they were doing that, and because you can kind of kind of like wincing in your head that like having like the lack of oxygen, just going slowly insane. In that.
That was pretty frightening. Yeah.
I liked the one thing I will say I liked about the villain is that she knew what Elastigirl's weaknesses were, like putting her in a cold room, like in a freeze chamber to stop her from stretching, or else she'll break, and obviously making Elastigirl obviously go. Mindless without oxygen and stuff like that. So, be interesting to see if later on if Helen had any like side effects to that.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, there's there's like proper like sacrifice to what to Helen's well-being for the greater good. So that'll be interesting. So after the whole thing, the supers are then given full legal status after everything goes there, and after that. Whole fair, we get the scene between Tony and Violet finally, getting together again, and second time. So
yeah, just just like in the first movie in which they were going to go see a movie together, now they're actually going to go see a movie together.
But they were going to until obviously bank robbers armed with machine guns start driving down the street, and obviously we get this variation of the ending where the car turns into the Incredible, and obviously they go and chase the robbers, and that's a great way to end the film.
Yeah, let's just hope that we don't get the follow-up to that another 14 years later.
Yeah, so to be honest with you, I mean, I think we need to talk about how it performed at the box office, because last time I checked, and I mean, this is going to be different from depending on where you go, but apparently right now The Incredibles 2 is becoming the third animated film to pass $400 million at the box office and counting, because as of this broadcast, we still don't know the full box office figure, and maybe we'll update this. When we finally get the full figure. But in regards to this right now, it's at least made about over $400 million at the moment. So, but we won't really know what the full figure is until basically close of office.
Yeah.
So we still got that
but
to
still,
do. So,
$400 million. That's pretty good. Still made a lot more than Good Dinosaur. So we know that it's in good hands.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing I definitely would like to, I think we definitely should talk up a sequel at this point because, I mean, I would definitely still like to see an Incredibles 3
Yes.
after this. And in regards to Incredibles 3, I mean, I really hope they maybe go with what the short film was trying to go for, and that is both Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible dealing with empty nesting, maybe. And that maybe they branch out.
and then we
Kind of like
can
the
see
same
about
way
what
that
Dash,
how.
Twilight, and Jack Jack.
I mean, not exactly the same setup. I mean, it'd be pretty tragic if Dash went the Nightwing situation and obviously fell out with Batman and obviously he became Nightwing after that, and they go through that whole that whole situation. Maybe that might be pretty cool, something to do with Violet, but not with Dash. But I mean, who knows? And obviously, you'll get an older Jack as well, and so you'll be able to get him as a as a more well functioning character rather than just a baby. So that's another thing actually I wanted to talk about this film. Sorry, I wanted to mention as well. Everything seems to be an action scene in The Incredibles 2. Like, when them visiting the house and obviously the floor, obviously coming away, and then you get the fight scene with the raccoon between him and Jack. And everything seems to be an action scene in The Incredibles 2.
Yeah, and I guess that's why a lot of people do seem to like it, because every single moment is an action scene, as opposed to like in towards like 1/3 of the movie, in which you have all these scenes with talking, and then we get to the action scene like towards the last third. I guess for a lot of people, they're like, now we get fighting and more fighting and more fighting.
Do you know
I guess for some people, they actually like that.
Do you know what the cherry on the top of the action cake would have been? Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson.
he just randomly turns up and just starts fighting.
Dwayne Johnson, John Cena, I don't know, somebody else. But
Vin Diesel.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
for some reason, I want them.
Yeah, people who are in like famous brawls in like films and stuff. So that would have been pretty fun to see in this film. But obviously, it's a superhero themed movie, not an action movie. So I guess it's an action movie, comedy movie.
Fair enough.
So yeah. So, our biggest moment of the whole PixMix, I guess. We are going to score The Incredibles 2. Now, let me give an overview on this, okay? I love how it looks. It looks brilliant. I bet it's going to look brilliant in 4K. It looks brilliant on the big screen. I definitely will tell you that. I love the music for it. They brought in the original team to do the music again. Obviously, Brad Bird is still on directing and everything when it comes to how the movie functions and everything like that. I love how it sounds. I love the voice actors. I do like the villain. I do like the characters in the Incredibles. Even though some of them have not evolved, the Incredibles are still the Incredibles. So I'm going to go with 9. I think, with this film.
Yes, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 as well, because remember, this had a lot to follow up on. The original Incredibles was an amazing movie that had such a unique premise and also had a great balance between action and family moments. And the sequel also does this as well. It may be a rehash towards the first movie, and there could have been some elements that would have been done better, but this is definitely a worthy follow-up to the first movie, and I would love to see more possibilities with the third movie if it ever does happen. There's 2 things I want to bring up right before we close it. Number one, for any of our viewers and listeners who are listening to PixMix, there is a couple of scenes with Screenslaver that does involve with flashing lights. So if any of you guys are very sensitive to epileptic shock, then I would suggest that you maybe wait for this movie to come out on DVD or on Blu-ray or on demand, so that if you are watching this on the big screen, then you don't get a severe headache or, heaven forbid, break out into a seizure.
Yeah,
because
I can't get why they can't edit. Here's the thing that annoys me about this, and I'm really glad actually you kind of brought this up, because I do have something to say about this. Why is it that Pixar, right? You remember in Inside Out that the fact that they could edit out, like they edit the vegetables on what's her name's desk, on Riley's tabletop when she was a kid. They can do all of those things. They can do like all the alterations in that, but they can't remove strobe effects from a movie.
I don't know.
Really? Like you can't do a strobe light effects version of this film? Like, I really.
I hope that they fix this when the movie is released on DVD or on Blu-ray or on demand. I hope that they tone down the flashing lights because that is a severe problem for a lot of people. I think I even read on social media that that people went through headaches and they went through migraines when watching the movie, and they almost like walked out of the theater because of that, and that is not good.
Yeah, that's not good at all. And on top of that as well, it's like, I mean, it's I'm really surprised this isn't the remember in that episode of Pokemon that
Yes.
hospitalized all those children. I'm really surprised that. I mean, I was actually quite surprised by it. I mean, I'm not affected by strobe lighting, so it doesn't really bother me that too much. But I would definitely say this: I'm really surprised that we didn't get the same situation that we got with Pokemon.
Yeah, that is true.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe in the Japan. Maybe
the second thing I want to bring up right before we close this episode of PixMix is that when looking through the credits, I saw John Lasseter's name, and considering that we did talk about it in a previous episode of PixMix that now Disney has let John Lasseter go.
Well, hang on a second. They haven't let him go yet. They're basically saying he's good for the end of the year, and then after that, he's going to be gone.
Right, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's either this movie or possibly Toy Story 4, in which it'll be the last movie that John Lasseter will ever be involved in with Disney.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you wonder. I mean, here's the thing about this as well. I mean, John Lasseter, as far as I'm aware, has been absent for the vast majority of the Incredibles 2 production. In regards to that. So I like to think that The Incredibles 2 is possibly proof that you don't really need him, at this point. I think if they still... I mean, here's the thing. I think, dare I say, maybe they should probably keep Brad Bird along, to probably keep things going and so people can learn off him a bit more, I guess.
As of right now, it has been announced that Pete Docter is going to be the main lead behind Pixar. And Jennifer Lee is going to be heavily involved with Pixar as well. So who knows? Maybe they will hire Brad Bird into Pixar. I'm not sure what the.
Well, of course, because so far he's made their best movies. He's made The Incredibles, The Incredibles 2, Ratatouille. It's like he's currently I would be very surprised if they don't keep continuing to bring in Brad Bird to sort things out of Pixar, because right now, in my opinion, he's definitely one of your top stars down there who's going to basically who's basically going to create you a movie that relates with people and will bring in hard cash. I think for your studio. So I'll be very surprised if Pete Docter and this other person you mentioned before, if they decide, okay, well, we're just going to go in a completely new direction. And just start bringing out stuff that people don't really like all that much. So.
Right, and so I mean, if it does get to that point, if Toy Story 4 was not involved with John Lasseter, then we can truly say that Pixar is now going to go through a brand new phase. We already talked about the golden era of Pixar when they were first starting, the dark age of Pixar when they were releasing stuff like Cars 2, Brave, Monsters University, and such. And now Pixar's revival with the likes of Inside Out and Coco and The Incredibles 2, we're now going to go through a new phase in which we're going to have the post-Lasseter phase.
Mm-hmm. And that will be an interesting phase indeed. But until then, we have just closed probably the concluding episode, I guess, of our current season of PixMix. So we want to thank you all for standing by with us. What we do next, we do have a few ideas about what we're going to do next, and in regards to what films we're going to review. But I will definitely safely say this: when there is a Pixar film, there will be PixMix. So all I was going to say is that it will probably come before you know it. So I guess our next major episode of PixMix is going to be Toy Story 4 next year. So, but until then, from me, Aaron.
And Patricia.
Take care. Thanks for listening to us for this whole season. Take care, and bye for now.
Thank you very much, everybody, and take care.